Singapore's Prime Minister Lawrence Wong, while addressing his nation regarding the tariffs imposed by the Trump administration, said that there is absolutely nothing wrong with running a trade deficit. Now, Singapore is a nation renowned for its economic discipline and global trade engagement. So, if they view trade deficits as a natural part of international commerce, it should prompt us to reevaluate why there's so much rhetoric in the news about trade deficits being a bad thing. Maybe it's because we're getting the national debt confused with the trade deficit, or maybe it's because we don't really know what a trade deficit or the national debt is. Whatever the case may be, let's break it down. First and foremost, the trade deficit is not the same thing as the national debt. Now, they both kind of sound similar. Both use the word deficit. Both involve big numbers. Both are in the headlines. And both are making everyone think that the United States economy has no hope. But the truth is, they're two totally different beasts. And neither one is always an indicator of a problem. Let's start with the trade deficit. At its core, the trade deficit is super simple. Imagine this. You've got a neighbor, let's call her Lisa. You borrow sugar, milk, and eggs from her all the time, but you rarely have anything she needs. So every month you take more from her than she takes from you. That gap is basically a trade deficit. You're importing more than you're exporting. For the United States, it works the same way, but on a massive scale. When Americans buy foreign-made products, things, smartphones from China, video games from Japan, handbags from France, yes, that Louis Vuitton is an import, shoes from Italy, or coffee from Colombia, that money flows out of the United States and into those foreign countries. But here's the kicker. This isn't necessarily a sign of a bad thing or some economic horror story. We import so much because we, the American consumer, want variety, quality, and lower prices. You see, globalization has made the world into a mall, and developed nations like the United States buy the most out of that mall, not because we are all rich, but because our dollar is higher in value than most other currencies. For example, if you can buy one burger in the USA with $5, you might actually be able to buy two burgers with that same $5 in a country where their currency is valued lower than ours. What I just referred to you is what economists call the purchasing power of the dollar. Americans can shop till we drop in the global mall because the purchasing power of the US dollar allows us to do so. And that's exactly what we do. Thus, the trade deficit is representative of our choices, like your preference for Japanese animes, and our ability to act on those choices, like your ability to buy a Japanese anime. Buying a Japanese anime series adds to the trade deficit, but does that mean Japan has taken advantage of you? The trade deficit reflects our choices as consumers and as businesses, not some broken economic engine. Now let's talk about the national debt, which is a whole different conversation. The national debt is the total amount of money the United States federal government owes. Think of it as Uncle Sam swiping a credit card. When the United States government spends more than it collects through taxes, it borrows the difference by selling something called a United States Treasury security. These are basically IOUs that say, hey, if you lend me money now, I'll pay you back later with interest. Investors, banks, retirement funds, and even foreign countries, like the ones we buy imports from, buy these securities because the United States is seen as a safe bet. So every time the government has a national deficit, meaning it spent more than it received in tax revenue, the national debt will go up. And who comes to our rescue? The very countries that we are buying all those imports from, like Japan and China. We buy their goods and they invest in us by loaning to Uncle Sam. And having national debt, by the way, is not inherently a bad thing. Look at it this way. Is having a mortgage a bad thing? If you need to make a huge investment like buying a house, what's wrong with getting a loan and paying it back with a little bit of interest? The only time having a mortgage could possibly be a bad thing is when you can't make your monthly payment. The government operates in the same way. When they need to make a huge investment to repair a highway, they don't have to pay for it all at once in cash. They can borrow and pay the loan back slowly. Thus, The national debt simply has to be managed, just like your mortgage and car loan payment, but it doesn't have to be zero. So, what's the takeaway here? The trade deficit is about trade, the flow of goods and services in and out of the country. The national debt is about government borrowing to pay for things like military, Medicaid, Social Security, and infrastructure. One is about the economy's shopping cart, that's the trade deficit, and the other is about the government's budget, that's the national debt. Neither causes the other, and fixing one doesn't magically solve the other. So here's the big picture. A trade deficit doesn't mean your country is failing, and national debt doesn't mean your economy is doomed. These numbers, big and bold as they may seem, are only small pieces of a much larger, living, breathing economic story. When we focus too much on isolated terms like deficit or debt, we miss the most important part. Context. The strength of an economy like the United States isn't measured by a single headline or statistic. Rather, the strength of the United States economy is measured by its ability to grow, adapt, innovate, and meet the needs of its people. And in a global economy, prosperity isn't a zero-sum game. When the United States trades with countries like China and Japan, both sides benefit. When we borrow responsibly, it allows us to invest in new ideas, create jobs, and maintain the systems that make daily life possible. So rather than reacting to these terms with fear or suspicion, challenge yourself to lean in and learn more, because the more you understand about how the world's economy works, the less likely you are to be swayed by scare tactics or political spin. When we choose to educate ourselves, we start to see that global cooperation, healthy trade relationships, and well-managed debt can all be tools for shared progress and peace. So let's stop letting fear write the headlines, and let's start using curiosity to write the future. Now, if you are tired of being Frenched up the bass by crooked politicians and thieving CEOs, just hit that subscribe button, because here at Crystal Clear, we keep it simple and sharp, no jargon, just real talk.